All right, let's dive right on into it. I'm going to start from the beginning for our YouTube people. Welcome to the panel titled Managing and Monitoring Your Kids' Online Reputation and Promoting Online Privacy. All that I ask is that everything is light, bright, and polite because it will be on YouTube, and use your big voice because we need to pick it up over there. So let's start off with Hayley. Hayley, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, my name is Hayley Kaplan, and I am a blogger and a speaker. And basically, I try to help parents, families, businesses keep their reputation and their privacy as best as they can. And I do that through my blog and by educating people in person and online.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Dani, Jacoby, and I'm an advocate and a blogger and a speaker. I am also the founder of a website for victims of bullying to come and share their stories. It's a safe place for them to be heard. And I speak on bullying and self-esteem and positive body image as well.
I'm Hurley. I'm a child and adolescent psychotherapist in El Segundo in the South Bay area of LA. I'm also an author. I'm writing a book called The Happy Kid Handbook. Stay tuned, coming soon. And I also write, I'm a child development expert for allparenting.com and everydayfamily.com, and I have a website called Practical Parenting, so you can kind of just find me everywhere at this point.
I am Tracy Gallagher. I'm a travel reporter for a PBS show, Travel Detective. So why am I here? Because I studied communications at UCLA and did my senior paper on children and media, which led me to become involved with the group Common Sense Media. So I'm on the LA advisory board, and if you haven't heard of Common Sense, it's just fantastic. I discovered because I'm also a mom of 3, and whenever my kids hear me say, "You want to see that movie? Let me just check with Common Sense Media," they cringe. But that's how I first got introduced, because they give great movie and book reviews on what's appropriate and age appropriateness, and I feel better having a little friend reinforcing my doubts that they should not see, some crazy killer movie.
That's really helpful. And you know what, we're going to start, Tracy, with you. We're going to spice it up a little bit. Tell us what's working to manage and monitor your kids' online reputation, because you said you have 3?
I have 3.
Yeah, what are you using, or what's working for you as a mom, but also as a professional in this space, to manage and monitor online space, and also, are you promoting any online privacy to your kids?
Very good question. Well, for me as a mother, and also to reinforce Common Sense Media, what Common Sense Media is all about, that's influenced me, is that we don't censor kids getting involved in social media. I know Ask FM was brought up, and that's one that I think we can handle in a different way. But we don't promote it. We say, yes, this is a part of life. This is what's going to happen. We would like you to be informed, digital citizens, we call it, and have a healthy relationship on media. So what Common Sense Media does is goes out and instructs schools and parents how to advise kids to navigate these worlds. And as a mother, I have taken on that because it does empower them to know how to go onto these sites and work the world. And what you need to do is live in the space in which your children live. And in other words, follow them, friend them, monitor what they do. And it's not that hard. I mean, I had a sort of summit at my house a couple years ago, and I was surprised at all the parents who did not know how to get on Facebook and look and see what's going on. So the best way to do that is to go and create an account yourself. Trust me, because I feel very fortunate. My husband does nothing, and I can tell the conversations that he has with my children that he's very disconnected with some of the little nuances of each network. Not in a bad way, that's just not his thing. Where because I blog, I have a travel blog, I have travel sites, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. There are little nuances that when you follow them, you know that not just to look in the news, but you need to look on the clicker and see what else they're doing there. So this vernacular becomes more familiar when you get on and participate in what they're doing, and comment positively. Like I had a discussion with my son about, I know you're on Instagram, let's talk about the kind of things you're going to post. What are positive things? Do you think people want to see you all the time? Let's be a little more creative. Don't be so self-centered. Look at the world around you. Those kind of conversations are important, as well as the next topic Josh kind of asked about, privacy. Once again, when you're on, say, Facebook with your children, learn about the privacy settings. It's really not that hard to do once you're on. I mean, I had to figure it out myself. I think you all probably can go and spend probably a couple hours learning about the privacy settings for all of these different social media sites. They should have, in my opinion, I think they should have private settings on all of these places so they can monitor who looks at their stuff, who could contact them. That's the dangerous thing. And then also, you know, when they're going on different websites, there's actually a law in place that says kids under 13, under or under 13 may not have information, thank you, taken from them. So that's something to be aware of. You know, when they go on these sites, there's little boxes you can check. I comply with the policies of the site, but in those pages that no one reads, you're basically saying I'm 13 and over when you might not be. So those are all the things that working. Basically, use your gut and your intuition and support your children. Don't ban them from doing certain things, or some of the other speakers said don't punish them in a harsh way because they'll just rebel. But support them in what they do and educate them.
That's great. Katie, what are some ways that you're using to manage and monitor your kids' online reputation and promote online privacy? How many kids do you have?
Well, I only have 2 kids and they're young. They're 7 and 5, so they don't have an online profile. Although I do, I will post pictures of them on my Instagram account, and my husband plays with a famous musician. My husband is a bass player, and he plays with a famous musician, and their fans will sometimes try to friend me and swipe pictures to try to just know us better, which is a weird thing I can't wrap my head around, but that's just something people do. So I've had to be very careful about my privacy settings, particularly on Instagram, and I don't let anybody in on Facebook that I don't know in some capacity. And I'll have people message me and say, don't you remember me from such and such? Like, oh yes, okay, now I remember you. But I do say no more often than not on Facebook. And then Twitter, I just keep professional, so that's an easy fix. I'm not sharing pictures of them. But because they're young, they don't even really use technology very much at all. I'm teaching them how to type because I believe in teaching them how to do things correctly before they start going down the rabbit hole of iPads and swiping. I'd like them to learn it the right way. But I work with tweens and teens who are online a lot, who are walking home from school, tweeting and texting and Facebooking. And I one day was actually walking to the farmer's market with my young kids, and I saw this group of about 12 and 13-year-old girls, and every single one of them was texting or tweeting, and I thought, dear God, what has happened to us as a people? Everybody is connected. And I really started working with my clients more closely on that because I realized that they don't realize that they're checking out, that they're not socializing face-to-face, they're only socializing on a screen, and that's a different kind of socializing. What I know about parents from working with parents for many, many years is that they like to be in control. What I can tell you about tweens and teens is they don't like to be controlled. So it's a balancing act. There are tools like Net Nanny Social, Socially Active, where parents can sign in to a dashboard and pull up their child's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They can have everything. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing to have. It gives you easy access. It gives you an easy way to see it all at once. I think it's smart to be following, like Tracy said, to be following, to be knowing what your kids are up to, but nothing beats being honest with tweens and teens about this stuff. If you're going to do Net Nanny Social or one of those programs, you need to let them know that you're doing it. Because spying on them is not a good thing. They know when you're spying on them. Trying to control passwords, changing the passwords every single day. You have to do this many chores to get your password. You have to, forget it. They're on 4G, they know what they're doing, they know how to work around all of these things. You need to have honest communication. I think a lot of parents say like, well, she's a good kid. She's not gonna make those bad decisions. She's not gonna do those selfies that other kids are doing. They're impulsive by design. Their brains are impulsive. And when the herd is doing this and you're the one that's not following the herd, well, then you're different. So you're either taking a risk and your self-esteem is either so high that it's worth that risk, or you're gonna get pummeled because you're the one who didn't follow the herd. And that is a tough position to be in when you're 13, 14, 15 years old. So I think parents need to really talk to kids about, well, what happens when you post that selfie in the bikini on the beach? What happens 2 years from now when you're applying to college and that's what's all over your Instagram feed? Because The reality is college admissions offices, they are looking at these feeds. You can be as private as you want. They're finding the information. What they're looking for is character and integrity. And if what they're seeing is cyberbullying or a lot of self-absorbed kids posting slightly inappropriate pictures, what does that tell them about your character and integrity as a person? So, really talking honestly with kids and giving them concrete examples of this is a good thing to post on Facebook. Hey, you're involved in this community service project. Talk about that, post that. You went to a fun birthday party with your friends. Post a picture of that. That's appropriate, age appropriate stuff. And tell them, give them very concrete examples of what's not appropriate and what might hurt them either today, tomorrow, or 3 years down the line, because as we all know, once it's out there, it's out there. The other thing that's working that I want to hammer home is schools and parents working together. And I know that's a daunting task for schools. I mean, even my daughter's, I was telling Tracy, my daughter's elementary school is just starting to see Instagram trickle down into the 5th grade, which is alarming, but it is what it is. Having meetings, getting the parents in and providing education for them, because a lot of parents are swamped. I mean, we say to the parents, well, stay on top of the apps, know what's happening. It's impossible to stay on top of the apps. I mean, I can hardly stay on top of the apps, and it's part of my job, so that's a daunting task for parents, but working together, teachers can make a huge, huge difference teaching kids about this stuff, like using the technology time not just to type things and not just to make cool digital designs, but to actually teach them about using, having a digital footprint and using these apps and using these websites and how to use them responsibly. That makes a big difference.
That's a really good tip. Dani, walk us through what's working to manage and monitor online reputations for kids.
I think for me, because I feel like from a younger, not a much younger standpoint, but a somewhat younger standpoint, I feel like what works for me is really having an open, kind of like you said, open communication, open dialogue, keeping it a good, positive conversation. And I also feel like parents a lot of the times, maybe you might look at a site and it might be confusing to them, and so they kind of take a hands-off approach and go, I don't know how to use this, do it, and they trust their kids. And I think that's great that parents can trust their kids, to use these sites, but at the same time, I feel like, it's a parent's job to, educate yourselves and learn how to use the site, and, just take a few minutes. It doesn't take that, that long to kind of just, see how it works and check out the privacy settings and, just get the names of the websites your kids are on and look at it for yourself. And, and I feel like for me, somebody told me once, you should Google yourself, see what comes up. So I decided to Google myself. Like, this is a little bit scary, But, and I feel like, if you have any sort of online presence or any sort of thing where you're in a professional circumstance where you're Googleable, it's just about looking at what's out there and really monitoring it and saying, okay, this isn't good, this isn't going to be good for me or my kids, and do what you can to adjust it and talking about it openly.
How many of us have Googled ourselves in the last week? Who knows the 2 different ways to Google yourself? Raise your hand. Oh, you did? Awesome. Okay, there's 4 of us out of about 25 that know the 2 different ways. We're going to show you in the next panel. I'm going to show you what I walk kids through. What you see and what colleges see. 2 very different things. We'll walk you through that in a few minutes. All right, that was really great, Dani. Thank you for that. Hayley, walk us through what's working to manage and monitor kids' online reputation.
Well, everything everybody said, which applies almost from every panel to the next, because it all overlaps. But for me, what I've found has worked really well is connecting with not only my kids, but other kids online on the same social media platforms. But there's a trick to it. You can't connect and then act like they're friends. Somebody else said, you're not your kids' friends. You really have to be a silent observer in the background. Because if you get there commenting too much, then they're not going to act the way they would naturally. They'll move to another platform. And to give you a couple of examples, now I know I have to be safe first.
A little bit light, bright, and polite.
So I can't give you the exact examples of what my kids have done. So I'll speak vaguely about my own son's high school experience. He's now in college. But imagine how I felt when I went online on Facebook and I saw he had said he did something very inappropriate. It was sexual in nature. And I'm like, I know my son didn't do that. Well, no, I didn't say it like that. I was like hyperventilating. What can I do? He was in start testing at the time. I tried to phone him. I didn't care that we're not supposed to. I'm calling my other son. Do you know your brother's passwords? I'm calling my husband, freaking out for the first couple of hours. And finally, he calls me back. Mom, what's up? How could you post that? Everybody's going to see it. Now, not only had he posted this slightly sexual in nature thing, people had run with it and commented, congratulations, hope it was fun, blah, blah, blah. So to make matters worse, right? It turns out that he lost a bet. It used to be when he lost bets, we'd go out to dinner and be wearing a Sharpie moustache. In this case, it was posting something online. And so when I got his password, I deleted it. That was my learning curve. But then I used it as a teaching experience for the future with him. And then we've continued to have a few as time has gone on. For example, the time he ordered pizza, and he decided it would be really funny to call himself Ben Dover. And so then when the receipt came, he posted on Facebook with my address, my full address. You know, so again, I didn't chastise him online. I pulled him aside, and you can't do that. I don't want everybody to know my address.
Boys are the best. Only a guy would do that without peer pressure. He did it on his own?
Of course on his own.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we've got lots of stories like that. So anyway, the other thing that I have that's actually worked to my family's advantage is because I am kind of cool in the way that I interact with my kids online, a lot of their friends have asked to be friends with me too. So what's great about that is I get to see what they're doing as well and use that to teach my own children and on my blog other people. And there was one kid in particular, this was the last senior year where he was going to Princeton and posting a lot of inappropriate things. So first I went to my son and said, maybe you should tell your friend, because somebody else, I think at the end of the bullying panel, somebody said the importance of being responsible for other people too. You have to watch out for other people. I want other people to watch out for my kids. I want my kids to watch out for others and to help. It really takes a village. And so he spoke to this kid, and then I noticed things were still going on with this kid. Eventually, I called him privately, and I spoke to him about it. What happened next? He unfriended me. It wasn't my kid. We're now friends again, but the point is, as parents, we have to be so careful in how we correct them. We don't want to punish them. We really want to be subtle in how we deal with it. So that's the one thing that's working. Passwords. We had a whole panel on passwords. That is so important. Parents, we are so responsible for modeling good behavior in everything we do. If we don't use good passwords, if we don't show good behavior online, imagine, okay, if I'm connected to my kid on Facebook, they can see what I'm doing too, right? So if I'm posting my pictures on vacation while I'm on vacation and letting everybody know, hey, my house is open because I'm not there, I'm showing my kids that they can also do that kind of thing. Checking in at places. Telling everybody where you are, what you're doing at all moments of the day, it's not okay. A lot of adults do that. We have to explain what's not okay and what's okay for our kids too. Privacy settings. On my blog, I have a bunch of different articles that will walk you through step by step. Now, the thing to know about privacy settings is, God bless Facebook and all these other social media platforms, as soon as you think you've got it figured out, they change them. So what works is constantly being aware and constantly checking what's going on, revisiting those same things to make sure things haven't changed. Let me see if there's anything else. Apps. This is a hot one for me right now, apps, because I have a lot of friends who are bloggers and they would like me to comment on their articles on, say, Huffington Post. But when I go to Huffington Post to leave a comment, I have to sign in with Facebook. Now, if you take the time to read what they want you to do, they want you to give them permission to post on your behalf. Okay, does everybody understand what that means? That means Facebook can say they're me and they can post. Now, Facebook is still, I'm going to call them reputable enough that you don't have to worry. But there are other apps that are not. And so we're hurting our privacy and other people's privacy when we use some of these apps. And I think a lot of people have gotten immune and maybe perhaps they think, well, everybody's doing it, so it's okay, but that's not. We have to keep educating each other. We have to keep alerting each other to problems. And the last thing I'm going to say that's helpful is when I let an app do things on my behalf, one of the things the app wants to do is perhaps access my contact list, my friends. Now, I'm hurting their privacy in addition to mine. We have to be considerate of the other people as well. So going into a weak link in a chain, we don't want to have a weak link. We want to protect other people, teach other people in an attempt to protect ourselves.
That's very wise. Those are some very good tips. Let's move back down to Tracy, and let's talk about what's not working these days. And are there any tips, tactics, or tools that you're using to overcome what's not working?
Well, we've touched upon this, but being overly critical about your child's social media use or forbidding it for kids 13 and over because they are just going to run away, find some other way to do it. And I know I mentioned I would definitely recommend monitoring them in some way, whether it be following or friending them. But one technique I do is I actually made up a name and didn't put a picture in and follow my son. So my kid, my friends, he's not embarrassed that his mother is following him because no one knows who Loving Life Diva is. He made me change. That was my first name, and he's like, "Mom, that's worse than your real name. Change it again." So I was like, "Okay, I'm just trying to be really anonymous."
Loving Life Diva.
I don't know. I was in a good mood. That was first. So then I just change it to more normal stuff, and he's fine with it. And there's no picture, so anyone looking to see who follows him would never suspect that his mother is following him. And I don't really comment, but I will look and see, and I will come out publicly, but I'll pull him aside and say, "What does this mean with this child?" Whatever. So what's not working is being too overly aggressive and banning them from social media. Another thing that is not working, and Katie kind of touched on it, we have seen in our group a lot of schools and parents together as a body not really on the same page. There have been, I've known some instances where the schools don't get involved in different social media disputes, and then schools have actually expelled children for sexting incidents, whatever. I think what Common Sense Media we've discussed in our meetings is that there really needs to be set policies from the get-go so everyone is clear, the kids know, they're empowered by those rules because they know the limits. My kids know they are not allowed to have a phone on at school at all or they are kicked off. And quite frankly, they're okay with it because everyone's doing it, they're empowered, and it's not an issue.
Raise your hand if you have a contract with your kids at school, or your kids have a contract with the school. Do they have a contract? No? Raise your hand high, don't be shy. Okay, so half the room or so, you have a contract with your kids, a social media contract of some sort? Okay, cool, keep going, sorry.
Yeah, and that's helpful because then also, as well as at home, you have to have policies and rules because at school can be distracting, very distracting, and kids could behave different ways. But also at home, you want them to be able to live in the moment. If they know they have to put their phone down and charge while they go do their homework, don't have your phone in the same room while you're doing your homework, then they're able to be in the moment, not be distracted, what can I post now, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things that are not, I shouldn't have said it's not working, but I don't see many schools working it out well. When the schools that are working with their policies and their consequences have better outcomes. That's a better way to say it. So.
That's helpful. Katie, what's not working?
I think, everybody sort of talked about the parents and the too much liking and too much interaction, and that is important for parents to know that the best way to get your kids to create secret accounts is to like everything that they post, because that's embarrassing. When I was 15, it was drop me off at the corner, please. I'm all right, I can handle it. I can walk to school from here. Now it's don't like everything that I say on Facebook, please. Student parents need to know that. I think for parents, they kind of need to do, you need to do, and I say this as a parent, it's like you got to do a gut check. If you know that you're prone to freaking out over small things, like things just are going to make you anxious and you're not going to react the way that you would have wanted to react, then maybe dad monitors the social media or, you know, watches the feed, or an uncle, or, you know, somebody else close, an aunt, somebody else who's a close family member who can kind of say like, you know, maybe this isn't so appropriate, let's talk about this. You know, if things are going to stress you out and you're not going to handle it in a way that will drive your child farther away from you, then enlist help. I mean, it does. It was you that said it takes a village, right? I mean, it does. It takes a village, and you have people, whether it's a relative or a close friend or somebody. You've got someone else who can look out for your child and take a little. I mean, you need to be aware, but if it becomes a thing where you're constantly watching all the apps and all the feeds to see what's happening, well, then that's not good parenting either, because then you're parenting from afar. You're watching what they're doing here instead of watching what they're doing right here when they're right in front of you. So I think that's an important disconnect that we need to talk about. We need parents to be more aware of. The other thing is, I think it was Hayley was talking about, we model everything we do. And anyone who reads anything I write is tired of me saying this, but you've got to be the person that you want your child to be. So, I mean, we look around the room and almost everybody here has a phone in front of them right now, and in fact, don't be mad at me, but you're being encouraged to tweet while you're sitting here. If a child were to sit in a high school classroom or a college lecture room and tweet or text, that would be considered rude. So we need to think about the messages that we're sending. If we are not making eye contact when our children are talking to us because we are checking a text that's really not that important, what is the message we just sent? What you said isn't important, this is more important. Those are the subtleties that kids really internalize. It really can fracture a relationship. It is happening. Parents are calling me, I don't know what the problem is. You know, we say to our kids, you need to turn in your cell phone at night, you know, at 9 o'clock I want it in my room so that you're not up all night. Well, that's actually a good strategy, because studies are coming out and sleep deprivation is being linked to cell phone use at night, iPad use at night, that sort of thing. They're saying, hey, read a real book before you go to bed, because the information that's getting into your brain from the iPad or the Kindle is actually keeping you awake for 20 minutes extra, and then you're tired the next day. But we also need to turn in our phones and our iPads and our things, because we're not doing that. So we're really, and yes, adults are different than children, and children need to know that there are different rules when you're an adult, but still, so maybe you turn in your things at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock, but we need to set the example for that. We need to watch what we're posting, we need to watch what we're saying. I am seeing parents on Facebook, I cringe when I see it, I am seeing parents on Facebook who are not only complaining about their kids, but tagging their kids in the complaint, because that makes it funnier, I guess. I don't know, I mean, I see it as hurtful. If I were that kid, I would want to cry and probably be really mortified, but it's happening, and I think when we think about, why are kids doing this? Why are they posting those pictures? Why are they using these status updates wherever they're updating? Because they're trying to get validation, right? I mean, why is it as a parent that every time your kids go down with the stomach flu, the first thing you do after you clean up the puke is get onto Facebook and say, oh, my kids have the stomach flu? Because 40 parents are going to say, oh man, we just got done with it, I'm so sorry, it's the worst, right? You get validated. You have people who say, oh, I understand where you're coming from, that stinks, I'm sorry that your holiday is ruined. Well, kids are doing the same thing, but if we want them to learn not to do that, we've got to stop doing it, or we've got to really explain it to them, break it down for them, show them what it means. We've got to be careful about the messages we're sending.
That's very, very wise. Dani, what's not working anymore?
Actually, I was going to say something similar to that. I think it's about setting a good example, and I feel like what's not working is when parents go in with, my kids will never see this, or they won't find out about it. But kids are smart, and teens are smart, and they, a lot of the time, know how to get into these social networking sites. And I overheard somebody the other day, a parent talking to another parent about her online dating that she's doing in front of her kids. And she's thinking her kids can't hear her, but this girl, she's probably about 8, was very intently listening to what she was saying. And the mom's talking about, her latest messages from men and things. And I think it's about realizing how really in tune your kids are and how much they really are listening and seeing what's going on. And they're smart. And I also think it's about finding a balance. between the, jumping into when you do see something that's maybe inappropriate or that you don't like that your kids are doing online, jumping into, it's very easy to jump into mother bear mode, as my own mom would say. They go, oh, what is this, what are you doing? Or, and I want to help you, or I don't do that. Or there's the stepping back and going, okay, handle it on your own. And I think it's about finding the balance between the two of, sitting down, having a discussion about it, and seeing, talking with your kid about what is working and what's not working for them, and letting them feel like they have a voice in it. Because I think if you sit down and, even as a teacher or as in any authority figure or as a parent, you sit down and you reprimand and say, don't ever do that again, or you'll be punished, or I warned you about this, I told you about this. The kid, I feel like, instantly shrinks down, and of course they're going to learn, okay, I'm not going to do that again, but they also don't feel like they have a voice in it. And I feel like that's part of being online and being responsible enough to be online, is to be able to have a say in what goes on, and to be able to I feel like it's important to have that conversation with your kids and say, well, what do you think? What would you like to do? And just go back and forth between it, because I feel like kids feeling like they're being heard, and teens especially, because they don't get it enough in other places. At least at home, that they can feel like that they have a voice in what's going on.
And asking, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt
No.
you, but you're reminding me of something I wanted to say, which is just asking your kids, especially we talked about Ask FM and some of the other apps that are not so great, but, well, what do you get out of this? Tell me what's good about it.
Yeah.
Tell me what's great about this, because everybody's using it and I don't really get it. So tell me, explain it to me, make me understand, and then ask them, well, what's not good about this? What's not working about this? They'll work it out. I mean, they're, like you say, they're smart, but they also have really big feelings, and that's all hard to navigate at that age. It really is. They've got hormones, and they've got changing brain structure, and they've got all sorts of things going on, and it's really hard to navigate.
It isn't. I mean, I talk about that too when I speak on bullying, when I speak to adults on bullying, that if you take a situation of a kid or a teen being bullied, and you put yourself in that situation, and imagine yourself, that something like that happening to you. Now, being an adult, you would be able to have the mental, capacity to take a step back and figure out what you need to do. But if you imagine yourself in that situation, but having raging hormones and, a teenage mind, that's a scary place to be. And, I think it's sometimes about, switching the situation around and putting yourself in their shoes.
Hayley?
I think there's a few things that aren't working. First of all, who has a little sense of panic after being at an event like this? Anybody? Because I listen to it, right? So I heard on one of the prior panels, one of the gentlemen said, he reads 250 blogs and you have to stay in tune to all of that. I disagree completely. Don't try and learn everything yourself, because then you will be in a worse, constant state of panic, and that's not good. You've got to use common sense and basic principles that apply to everything.
Well, in all fairness, that was a security expert for a large publicly traded company. He has to be the most knowledgeable guy, almost within a field of 50 people. But you, as a parent, I see what you're saying, common sense. But that gentleman, Reza, is sought after as one of the best in online. Here's the phishing tactics they're using. So he needs to, but you're saying the parents should.
I'm saying that if you think that you need to know everything that's out there, you're going to be so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You're going to be overwhelmed into panic and uselessness.
Yeah.
So I think that he does need to read 250 blogs, and I need to do it. But I don't think that's what all you have to do. And even I don't for a minute think that I can be on top of every app that's out there. There's new ones coming out multiple times a day. But you have to understand basic foundation, basic principles, and impart that information. So along the same lines of don't try to learn everything yourself, one of the things you must not do when you go home today is don't get your kids in a corner and start to bullhorn this all to them, because you know what? They're going to tune you out really fast, right? So don't try to teach them everything. Don't put them on information overload. They'll hear the first couple of things and then no, right? They're done. So you have to give it to them in little bites of information over time, casually integrated into Another thing that I hear I'm being rude, or just a little bit of a devil's advocate here,
I like it.
when you talk about a contract, that scares me too, because I can sit here and tell you, okay, don't do this, don't do that. The list it's growing, right? So it's better not to set strict rules, don't do this, don't do that, but to have discussions, two-way discussions, back and forth, and not all at once, so that you can get better buy-in. Other things that some parents do, at our house, they're only allowed on the computer X, Y, and Z. My kid is only allowed on these sites. Well, guess what? They don't have to walk very far from home where they can do it on their friend's smartphone. You may be that great parent that's giving your kid that Sprint phone that's very limited, but his buddy, her buddy, in fact, 10 out of 12 kids have the smartphone, and you think that the parents watching them every minute of the day, they can get access. So it's not tell them you cannot have it and you only do it this way. Explain carefully in stories. Stories work great, instead of just telling them what to do. Use anecdotes. One other thing I want to talk about is monitoring software. I've come to, at one point I was very anti monitoring software, parental controls, for more of the same reason. I've now come to change my mind that they can be great in conjunction. A lot of parents maybe aren't educated and don't know what the right conversations are to have with their children. So I was talking to a parent that started with a new program, and I was very impressed with the company, because they explained the importance. If you just use the software and this is all you're using, you might as well not even waste your time. It has to be in conjunction with basic parenting. You said it begins offline, right? You have to teach appropriate behaviors offline and carry it on. So monitoring software is good if you understand that that will maybe give you a point of conversation. So when you see that they've ended up at the wrong site, yes, we're all going to panic first, as this parent did when she told me, and she got a notification that her kid had entered an adult site, which turned out to not be an adult site. There's a lot of mistakes on the internet. Everything we see is not true. So it's a great place to start the conversation with your kid and to train them at a young age. By the time they get older, I would hope, my kids are 21 and 23, so I am no longer monitoring them. It's only about conversation. If I had younger kids, I would start it a whole lot differently. I would start with that monitoring conversation, and start the monitoring software, and start the conversation way early. So as they grow up, you have to watch them less. They know the right thing to do.
This is a great panel. Would you agree? These ladies are awesome. I have a little bit of a different take. I want to tell you what I've been trying on teens and tweens nationwide with some stuff. And when I get shut down, I take it out of the slide deck. I'm going to share this with you guys in about 20 minutes. But I've got a different take on how to impress colleges, because some of this online reputation, this has been really interesting with younger kids. And if I were to set out and say for the next year of my life, my passion is to help every kid be as employable as possible. Because if they're employable to an employer and be an outstanding employee or entrepreneur or whatever, then they get into a great college. Because college is when kids are going to turn out to be great and donate back, right? And then if they get into great college, that means they're outstanding in high school and they're doing something great as a leader, and so on and so on. So one of the tips I teach kids is and I call it an SOK. It's a silent opportunity killer. If you tweet something negative, something snarky, something rude, or you post something very, very inappropriate, an employer will see it, a college will see it, you'll have a 3.5 GPA, there'll be another kid that has a 3.5 GPA. In fact, everybody these days has above a 3.5 GPA, even though I couldn't even get practically in the threes. Every kid has that, and they're going to start Googling you because you're trying to apply for a full ride at USC, UCLA, or wherever. As soon as you want to get a full ride, all of a sudden they're investing in you. They're giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars as this stuff gets more expensive. So what do? They see, oh, you have red cups. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And all of a sudden, the silent, even though you have a red cup and you're 14, it was at the bar mitzvah and it was full of water, but you were holding 2 red cups because your sister went to the bathroom and you held it and someone took a quick photo and they posted it. And now you are on Facebook at the age of 14, 15, 16, looking like you're underage drinking. That employer would see that, a college would see that and go, I'm so sorry, we've got all kinds of other 3.5 GPAs and they're more well-rounded. So we call it a silent opportunity killer. They won't call you back, they won't return, they'll go, thank you so much, we'll keep your resume on file. Unfortunately, they'll never go, oh, but I bet that was a really good story. They never do that. So I'm a little hard on kids with that. The silent opportunity killers, you won't get a call back, you'll be frustrated, but I want you to get that job, so take this crap down. I also have something called the BFF homework assignment. I tell every kid that's a teen or tween, I've got a whole slide for it, I want to give you a homework assignment that only your bestie or your BFF has. And kids, there's usually 700 kids in the room, and they all turn and look at the person sitting next to you because they are sitting next to their best friend. At all times, in any assembly they can, there's always a bestie with them. And they kind of giggle, and that's when I have to wait 4 seconds for everybody to calm down in the bleachers, and then I go, okay, here's what you're going to do. I'm going to show you a homework assignment for your best friend. And I tell them, I would like you to please have your best friend in the next week look through your Facebook and Instagram account, and Twitter if you want, and go through and look for 3 photos that you should take down. And I want you to tell your best friend, I won't get my feelings hurt. You can say whatever you want. This homework assignment, say whatever you want. And the best friend usually comes back with 3 photos. Take this one, this one, this one. And that's when you ask, why? And your best friend would say, well, here's why. I want to show you because you have your double fist with white or red or blue cups. And you didn't know it, but it was at your grandma's birthday party and it was all water, but it looks inappropriate. Or this one where you're flashing gang signs. And you thought it was cute and it was funny, but you're at the UCLA campus and you're going to apply to UCLA because it's your #1 thing, and that might not look good at UCLA. Oh my God. So now you're best friend, because I can't scale my speeches. But I'll tell you what, we can scale best friends, looking out for each other on the long run. So that's the BFF technique to get you out of a silent opportunity killer. All these little 3-letter words for me. And then the last thing I'm teaching kids is to live a life that's light, bright, and polite. I want every kid to know that the privacy settings every 6 months on Facebook change. And therefore, if you posted something inappropriate, all of your non-friends will eventually see it, and every employer in college will eventually see it. And so I sleep really well at night knowing that everything on my Facebook, Instagram, and whatever, even though it could be private, maybe some people can't see some of them, it's publicable. Everything is picked up by Google. And my Google results, I'm very proud of them. I show people, hey, go Google me. I think that's really cocky for somebody to say, but you get the point. I would love for you to stumble upon my Google results. I'd love it when my 12-year-old niece said, you're famous on your Google images, because she stumbled upon it because she hears me say that, and she now looks up because it's a good example. So those are the 3 things. And then I have one more tool. Sorry to go on this long. I'm very passionate about this online, because this is how I'm different. I want to make sure kids are employable. And I think social media gets in that way. IFT is a great program. It's called ifttt.com. IFT, ifttt.com. It stands for the following phrase: if this, then that. And it's a little easy. You don't have to know any programming. You go to ifttt.com. And it has a bunch of inputs and a bunch of outputs, and you just connect some dots using this website. Tashaka, I'm sure, has used it 1,000,000 times. And it is amazing because it says, if my son were to tweet from this Twitter handle, then that. So if this happens, then send me an email with the tweet. If my daughter were to Instagram post, please send me an immediate email. Not so I can look at them and call them, but just so you're in on it, because we're all so busy. Wouldn't it be nice to have an email with the imagery? Or if my kid comes up, so that's a really cool tool to monitor somebody that you care about popping in, let them know, hey, I found this cool tool, now you can see what I'm posting, I can see what you're posting. That's a really neat tool to monitor on this topic, monitoring and managing online reputation.
Can I give you another one
Yes.
that I use? Has anybody set a Google alert on themselves? Yeah, so what I do is I set a Google alert on myself, on my blog, and on all of my kids. And I found that they weren't very accurate in the past, but suddenly they've gotten really accurate, and I'm getting alerts on my kids. My kids are active, they post on music sites, and so every time they're doing something there, I am actually getting notification. So I recommend that as another thing. Now again, nothing works in isolation. Don't rely on Google Alerts because, as I said, I found that they weren't coming as often as I wanted originally, but it is an important tool.
There's Google Alerts, they announced that they're dying. Google said we're not supporting it anymore. Maybe it doesn't have a revenue stream. There's a new firm called Mention.net that's phenomenal. Mention.net. I think my firm pays professionally about $5 a month. You get up to 7,000 mentions a month. You get up to 3 searches. It searches blogs, Twitter, and all this other stuff. So if Google Alerts don't work, go to Mention.net, and it is a very professional tool that will email you every day the mentions. as it happens, or each day or each week.
There's another free tool.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, did I say
Do you just need their name, or do you need like their passwords to all the?
No.
It'll find the public, for IFT, sometimes you can just search for the @ symbol on Twitter and Facebook, if they're public. Now, there is a way on IFT to have it log in once. You have to have this conversation with your kid. To use their password to have it log in, grab the credentials, the API, so then it has secret access, so your kid knows every time they post, you seem like you're cool because you're on it, but once that connection is made, you don't have to make that connection again for IFT. Go ahead.
The other tool that I use for other reasons is called socialmention.com, and that can be free or used. And so I've used it to figure out the sentiment of brands. For example, you can put in DirecTV love, DirecTV hate, and you can see what people are saying and gather the sentiment. But it's another way to see what's out there on the internet.
What questions do we have? Oh, yes.
I was just gonna say, I mean, there's all these controls and they're good and they help us stay on top of what's going on, but I think nothing beats just actually teaching kids how to monitor their own impulses when it comes to this stuff. But I had a teenage client last year that she was obsessed with Twitter and she just couldn't stop. And I said to her, like, for 1 week you need to follow the 5-minute rule. Like, write in what you think you need to say, and then shut down your phone. And 5 minutes later, go back and read it. If it's still important and you think that it has value, go ahead and tweet it. But if it doesn't have value, then delete it and try something else later. And she struggled with it. And then 2 weeks later, she came back and she said, "Kate, you're not going to believe it. We're all doing the 5-minute rule, and no one is tweeting as much." It's like sometimes like just giving them a thing, like talking and just empowering them to like, hey, put a pin in this for a minute, like just put a pin in this impulse for a minute and go do something totally different, come back to it, and then they realize, like, I don't know why I even wanted to say that. That was silly. So, just giving them little tricks so that they can teach themselves to monitor their impulse is really important, because it's eventually, as Hayley's kids are no longer, under her watch, eventually they grow up and they need to learn how to do this on their own. Our job as parents is to raise independent adults. We can't forget that when it comes to social media. We can't control them. We've got to raise independent adults who are responsible and socially responsible. And so we have to put in the time. That's what it boils down to.
Any questions? Yes.
I do. So based off of what you said in terms of employment and getting into college and the thing that kills your ability,
Silent opportunity killer.
Silent, yeah, that one. My background is in psychology, and I feel like a lot of what I heard sounds like a method of shaping. It's reinforced conditioning, which is a large aspect of parenting. And since technology, there's no kids Facebook and parents Facebook, so it's equal across the board, which changes the power dynamics. And going back to what you said there's no just because I say so with a Facebook or a Twitter, because you can go to a neighbor's house, you can do all of that. And if we're not, I don't know how the public school system works so much with social media, but I do know that the majority, Princeton isn't on their list, for example, because no one's telling them that they could go there, because in the classroom, which with socialization and parents working all the time to give their kids a tablet and give them a cell phone and make them feel important and cool, the teacher really is left to govern how people use the computer, and they also teach them how to use a computer, like what is a computer science class. And I don't know, I feel that the trust between a child and an adult, whether teacher or parent, will give a kid a better opportunity in college because they are a better individual. And I was wondering just what your thoughts were in terms of outside of college and employment, how do you view social media and how to govern it?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers, I have 0 answers. I just test them when I was cyberbullied, and as I run a company and I interview and hire people for my own firm, so I'm searching them. And I also have I know the deans at a lot of big schools now, and I'm always interviewing them and probing them. I think it comes down to, I love the 5-minute rule, and I also think that it's very, I'm going to show you a little bit later. I give kids a road plan. I want you to look at these 7 photos and how create a portfolio around Facebook. In fact, this is how I teach kids to walk into an interview. Hey, dear USC, I'm in your interview, I'm on round number 3. I printed out my Facebook page and my Instagram page. You guys are going to discover it anyways. Let me walk you through it so that you can see how dynamic I am, because you're going to see it anyways. And you know what? My 3.8 GPA is great, but let me show you my family, my dog, my volunteer work, and how I choose to spend my time. And I tell kids, make that a portfolio. Get discovered doing something right. And if you show them that, and this is my own theory, and I don't know anything, quite frankly, but I do know how
You know plenty.
to network with kids and get them. I feel like I'm a lure. I can woo them over to trying it my way once. It seems to work with a few thousand kids we tested it with. And give them a good example. You're going to get hired. I got the opportunity to work at Disney because I did this. I ran for politics. Let me show you what went wrong, what went right, and then give them that roadmap. And we're all doing that because we're in this room, but I don't think enough schools are usually calling a police department and saying, come in and talk about cyber safety, and it's going to work or reputation management. And unfortunately, they're telling our kids everything to not do.
Right.
And I've spoken next to those people, and I love it when they are not liked and I'm liked, because they have a job to do, and God bless them, they're amazing. They have a job to do to say, this is where the law takes over, and we've arrested these kids. And that's where I go, yeah, and you could go down that route. Hopefully you never do, but let's talk about colleges. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
But
I'm sorry,
also-
can I clarify my question? Because I don't, oh, sorry.
Well, I was going to, and I don't know if this is what you're asking, but I was talking to Tracy earlier about discussion to her about how much I love Common Sense Media, because they teamed up with the Teaching Channel, right? Was it the Teaching Channel? I don't know. There's like a series of videos on Common Sense Media, and they are for classroom use. They are teachers teaching classrooms of kids like how to manage their online profile, how to Google themselves, what it means when they see the results. Like there's a whole series of videos for schools, for use in schools. It's amazing. No schools seem to know about this. The schools need to know about this because this is what they should do in the technology
Well,
class.
thank you, Katie. That was the answer to my next question. So, the next one.
Oh, sorry,
That's it. It's a good resource for
Can
you.
I clarify the question, because I don't think I articulated it correctly. Besides college and employment, are you teaching them to post things of meaning and value, to not for an ideal? Because yes, you shouldn't tell them no, 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 but by saying this is what it looks like to look good, aren't you kind of ostracizing maybe things that they don't need to post online, but it's part of their personality? Because that line, I feel like, is becoming a lot thinner throughout time. So I don't know.
So don't shape them into a cookie cutter so that they get into
Well, yeah,
Princeton.
so how
Don't
do you-
tell them how to only create the profiling, because then they have no personality in it,
Because
and
this
then
is
it's
my
not them.
family, and they're
Which is
ideal, and
right,
this is
and
my dog. and
which
this
brings
is-
us back to what we were talking about earlier, which is like when you're controlling them and you're telling them only do this, this, and this, well then they start creating the secret accounts. And that's where the parenting and being really honest with them and giving them examples of like things that aren't, Princeton doesn't care about that birthday party, you know, at the whatever on the boat and everybody had a good time. Like they don't care about that if it doesn't look like anything is going wrong, underage drinking, whatever, right? They're just gonna gloss over that and they don't care. But kids should have the opportunity to show those parts of their personality. So it's teaching them how to do it in a way, think twice, you know, use the 5 minutes to think twice. Is there anything bad about this photo? Am I saying something that might hurt another person's feelings? You know, that sort of stuff, like guiding them to think globally before they hit post.
I guess
I have a question for Tracy. I teach middle school, and we had an incident just a couple months ago with our 6th graders, 4 kids, a boy and 3 girls, that got on Google Chat, and apparently they didn't realize that the Google Chat, all the kids that were on the listserv, everybody saw the chat, and it was beyond foul. I mean, I didn't even know about these things when I was their age, but it was really bad. But one of the mothers came in, swooped in after the kids were, we brought them in and talked to them about why it was inappropriate, why this couldn't happen, why parents from other families were calling, they were so upset by it. And one of the moms said, well, you do know about First Amendment rights, and the kids are actually saying that, you know, it's none of your business what they talk with each other. Well, first of all, it was a list of kids in a classroom at the school, and it was during school time, so we did have some right with it. So what do you feel about, how do we deal with the parents who literally are coming and swoop to their kids' defense as opposed to holding them accountable for bad behavior?
Well, that's exactly what I was trying to communicate before. There's a fine line between when, I mean, the school, that sounds like it was a justified case because it was during school hours. And so the school can make the argument, it becomes our business when this, and this happens, and it can be outlined in your policies or whatever. You know, Katie and I kind of touched on this in a private conversation too. It's like parent bodies are always going to be difficult. I mean, there are parent bodies. There's always going to be one bad apple, two bad. It's going to be us against them a lot of time, parents against the school when it comes to protecting their little baby hens. You know, Common Sense Media actually has like a school outreach program to train educators and to train schools how to work with parents, and they even bring the parents in, so it becomes more of a community, we're in this together sort of thing. And you know, if the parents know that the school administrators are doing it in the best interest to protect their children. I mean, think about it. What if, you know, the parents who are maybe complaining, were they the direct victims, or their children the direct victims of this? Or
Well, one of the mother who came in and talked about first, right? Her son, first was the son that was the word that we're having
it was the bully.
well, it wasn't a bully, it was extremely sexual in nature. It was
Yeah.
really inappropriate, and you know, but it was their right to talk about what they want. They're 12,
Right.
so.
I mean, that's something that really, it seems like it's common sense, you know, that's just inappropriate. But I think that there are a lot of instructional videos and downloadable materials. Common Sense Media has this fantastic program I'm going to tell you guys about, where it's a digital literacy and citizenship program. And what they're trying to do, Common Sense is what we're trying to do is get it so that children are stamped with this digital literacy citizenship on their high school diploma. So colleges see that, like, okay, this child has been trained in how to navigate the internet, what to post, how to post appropriately, and all the ins and outs. And it's almost like a little bonus, like this is one good reason we maybe should take a look at and employ this person who's been through this, or accept this child who's been through this program, and you know, maybe over someone who hasn't. So there's, you know, you can inquire about that because we go into schools, and some of the core curriculum topics on the internet on our site, commonsensemedia.org, are digital footprint and reputation, internet safety, privacy and security. It's specifically for schools, but as a parent, I download it myself and use it in my own home too. The exact address, here it is, commonsensemedia.org/educators/curriculum. And there's just, if you would like to get in touch, or if you'd like me to take a business card and give it to our LA office, or if you'd like to be in touch, we offer so many different workshops
That's
that,
for the parents and the students. It's for.
you know, we just had one with grandparents and students to kind of get grandparents on board. They're all, and our LA office is really energetic, and so they're open. Like, if you say this is what we need, you know, they might find a way to make it work. For instance, one of the schools in our neighborhood just got iPads or whatever, and parents were going crazy, like, oh my gosh, girls are FaceTiming my son, what do we do? So all these new things, right? Because this is a school tool, but yet they're using it also socially, inevitably, because that's what teenagers do. So Common Sense went in and kind of gave a tutorial for the parents about these, how the iPads work. And some parents didn't know what the teachers should be doing, and because someone touched on it, the teachers are really, I can't believe how many teachers ask the students to help them when they're using the iPads to teach. And so the teachers really need to be brought up because they are the forefront, the front line. Yeah. So I hope I answered your question. I think I would just tell you to get in touch with the organization. And sometimes when a mediator comes in and works with everyone, it all becomes a little bit more kumbaya.
One quick plug right before your thing. Please fill out your surveys because we're going to collect them right here in a few minutes, and somebody's going to thumb through, and we have this device that we're going to give away. We're kind of behind on things, but if you can make sure you have that ready in the next 5 minutes, that'd be great. And we're going to give away a Samsung Galaxy 3. So go ahead with your question.
This is for any of you, but I know that Katie, you've talked a lot about empowering the students, and then we talked about education, and I was just wondering, with all the reductions in schools and there not being even money to support computer classes, what strategy would you all use to get this digital literacy into the schools so that both the educators, the parents, and the students are trained?
So glad you said that, because my kids go to public schools, and all the private schools can afford it, that's what we've seen. And so they do go into some of the private schools for free. If they can't afford it, they make a point. So once again, if you want to.
Public school, they go to public schools?
Into
Private
public
schools?
schools for free. Yes, all the private schools, they pay for it. They pay for it. They tend to pay for it. But we have a lot of public schools, especially with the budget cuts, it's just not there. So they do some outreach to the public schools as well, because they're aware of that, yeah. Like they'll pay for a couple teachers from each school sometimes, it's a nonprofit organization, but,
And the videos that you have already on
Yeah,
the site,
are
the
free.
instructional videos that are free to download.
The downloaded
Teachers,
material.
teachers could download those to their own computer, watch them without the kids, base their own curriculum on it, maybe, have the computer in front of the class, whatever, but find a way to make it work so that they're talking about the information. Because even if the school doesn't have the monies for the technology class and the kids aren't using, computers or iPads in the classroom, they're probably using something somewhere else, so it's just a good idea to be talking about it.
Well, as a ex-parent, my children have graduated from public school, but also being
always a parent.
an avid volunteer, one of the things that comes up quite often is the resources. How are we going to get everybody in the same room, or at least in the same discussion when, were we going to get substitutes or, and so that's the whole thing behind it is, how do you even get them to see that this is so important that let's just block 30 minutes, block an hour,
Yeah.
so that everyone gets that education?
It is hard, and there's.
So there are
That's right.
resources available.
It's time
but
a
then-
resource.
Yeah.
Time is a resource too, is what you're saying. That's
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion too.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a couple of resources that I've gotten. One is this packet that the government will send you for free. It's called NetCetra, Community Outreach Toolkit. And then another website that's really great with free resources is called NetSmarts. School administrators have used it. Because have you downloaded their presentations that are really, really helpful? One of the things that, well, when I was in the bathroom earlier on, I heard a mom saying, boy, forget the kids, I'm learning so much. There's so much I didn't know. And I think that you have to almost start there. So maybe a great starting point is PTA meetings. And start to educate the parents, bring them in outside hours, because it has to be that village together. It has to be the school attacking it from one end, the parents from another, and that conversation instead of just giving them those rules. So I would highly encourage getting parents involved. And I know from being in a district where, I was in a district with Beverly Hills Unified School District, where each school had different resources and different levels of parent involvement. So I know each situation is unique, and so there's no one size fits all, but you got to start somewhere.
Getting the parents in is the hardest part. I mean, whatever incentives you can provide, just get them in the door so they can listen. And
Make it
my daughter's
mandatory.
school does a good
Yeah.
job of some meetings in the morning, some after hours for working moms, some different times. They do like all multiple times, and none of the meetings are filled. I mean, we've got Common Core going through. I went to a meeting, there were 25 parents out of the school's 700 kids. It was sad because the rest of those parents don't know what's coming down the pike in 3 weeks, because they couldn't make that meeting. So, and it's hard because teachers work it way too much already. So to say to you, hey, have more meetings,
But
have
that's
more
word of
times
mouth.
available, but that's
Yeah.
getting them, once you get them in the door, you can talk to them about it, you can be honest about it. I mean, they're more often than not worried about their kids not getting in trouble and their kids' safety. That's what parents care about. They don't want their kids getting kicked out of school or in trouble, and they don't want predators to be finding their kids on their cell phone. So get them in, talk about those things, but then feed into the other things. Here's what kids are doing, and you just have to get them in the door. That's the challenge.
Really GPS on phones? What you just said, like anyone can track you anywhere with the GPS. It's always on. So not just cyberbullying, it's turned into physical, imminent threat bullying, because they can always find you with geotags. And even as an adult, like past being a kid, if the law, how long so multiple question, how long has the law been in place that if you're under 13, no personal information is allowed? And then also, couldn't the data carrier find out if that child is underage and change their tracking system in a sense?
Or would
Is
that be nice?
Only because we're running out of time. I love the question. I think that's something that you can ask them right offline if you don't mind, just because I want to respect time.
I do, my bad.
It's good. It's a highly technical question. If you don't mind, let's do this. I want to take a group photo with all of you. Let's give a round of applause for these people.